The gentlewoman from California.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing, and I thank Chairman Bernanke for once again being here and helping us to understand his vision for how we deal with our economy. And of course, we're all pretty much focused on the subprime crisis because I think we all understand the role that it is playing in our economy, the negative role that it is playing in our economy at this time. We had, yesterday, Mr. Bernanke, we had some economists here testifying before this committee, and there was some discussion about the role of regulatory agencies and some discussion about public policymakers and whether or not we were going to overdo it and come up with new laws that may prove to be harmful to the overall industry and thus the economy. Let me just say that I think that you have been very forthcoming in talking about some missed opportunities maybe early on, with maybe what could have been done based on information that regulatory agencies should have known about, should have had access to, should have acted on, and so that's behind us. But I am concerned about voluntary efforts by the financial institutions who have some role and responsibility in the subprime crisis. For example, I held a hearing where Countrywide said that it had made 18 million contacts, had done 60,000 workouts, and out of that there were 40,000 loan modifications. This other coalition called Hope Now said they had done 545,000 workouts, 150 loan modifications, and 72 repayment. 72% of these were, well, we found that 72% of these were kind of repayment plans and they were not real modifications. Now, we're trying to act on the best information, and here we have these voluntary efforts that are representing to us that they are making these contacts, they are doing these workouts, and we look at this, we don't feel it. We don't see it in our communities. We don't have people who are saying that they got a workout that made good sense and that they have been contacted. How can you help us if we're to have any faith in voluntary efforts at all and not get so focused on trying to produce laws that will do some corrections? How can you help us with determining whether or not this information we're getting is true? Whether or not they're doing these workouts, whether or not they're doing this outreach. What do you do to track this voluntary effort?
Well, Congresswoman, you're quite right that the information has been very mixed. There have been a whole bunch of different surveys. They haven't been comparable. We don't necessarily know exactly what's going on. I think one of the benefits of the Hope Now Alliance is that they are trying to get a more comprehensive and more systematic data collection so we will know better how many people are being helped, how many are not being helped, what the form of the help is, and so on. So I do think that the first requirement for good policy here is to know exactly what's happening, and I agree with you absolutely on that. I also have some sympathy for your point that many of the actions being taken are very temporary, like a temporary payment plan or perhaps a forgiveness of a couple of payments and that kind of thing. In many cases, the only solution that's going to be enduring is a more sustainable mortgage or some kind of restructuring or modification. And I do think that we need to encourage the private sector to look to a greater share of modifications and restructurings in order to solve the problem rather than just to put it off for a few months. And I think that's very important. I think in addition, I believe the Federal Housing Administration, the FHA, could be helpful in that respect if it had more flexible products and more flexibility to refinance mortgages coming from the private sector to create, again, a sustainable solution for people in difficulty.
We're willing and prepared to do the legislative work. Again, we have relied on a lot of voluntary efforts, And I guess my question to you is, are we going to rely on these voluntary efforts to continue to strengthen their product, their work, or is there some way that you can have in your office someone or someones who can trace, follow, and dissect and determine whether or not these voluntary efforts are real?
Well, again, Congresswoman, I think the lead on the data collection is coming from Hope Now, but we also get our own data from some of the private suppliers of loan information, for example. So we're doing a good bit of analysis at the Fed, and we're looking for alternative solutions. But quite frankly, finding solutions that will be focused and help the right people at a reasonable cost is very difficult, just very difficult.